Hi boys and girls, it's Mrs. Holder, aka Stacey Slug in the Redwood Forest. And I wanted to take you on a little hike through the Redwoods. So let's go. This area right here doesn't have many redwoods because, as you might be able to tell, there's actually quite a lot of light that's coming in right here. So right here we have an area where there's a lot of low plants. We have a lot of different kinds of bushes and there's a lot of ferns. I see a lot of berry bushes as well. Here's a berry plant right here. So we'll keep walking along and see what else we find. Check this out. So here's a redwood tree that is completely hollow in the inside and charred. When I look over on this side, there's another one just like it. But this is a perfect example of how a redwood tree reproduces. Because as you can see, the dead tree on the left is not there anymore. But on the right side is where there's a new tree growing. Redwood trees do have cones with seeds inside of them, but here's a cone. Look how tiny that cone is. So you can imagine how small those seeds are that are inside the cones. In fact, the seeds are so small, they're about the size of red pepper flakes. Have you ever put those on your pizza? That's about the size of a redwood tree seed, which are inside these cones. So it's very unlikely that a redwood tree is going to actually grow from one of those seeds. But that is how redwood trees grow. Redwood trees reproduce by having little sprouts, little shoots that come off of a bigger tree. So back in the day when this tree, which is now a burned out hulk, when that tree was alive, it sprouted this tree right here, which is now a big giant tree. That tree sprouted the tree that's right next to it, right there. And then that tree is now sprouting all of these little guys. So it's kind of a chain reaction of this whole family of redwood trees that are all connected. Pretty cool. I just realized that right behind me, there's another example of redwood trees that are growing together. Do you see those two right there? Here's the big one right there. And then look at this little guy right here, and how he's sprouting off of the side of that other big one. They call the big tree, in this case, they call it a nursing tree, and the little trees are sprouting from it. It's a pretty cool thing. And here we come up to beautiful grove of redwoods. So now that we're in a little bit more of a shady area, this is where we're gonna find more of the tall redwood trees. There's also a lot of other plants that are still growing around here, such as this tree right here. This is a tan oak tree. And there's also a lot of other plants that are growing like right along the ground, like these little guys, which everybody thinks, oh my gosh, it's like a 4-leaf clover. Well, for one, count the leaves. There's only 3. So they're not 4-leaf clovers, my friends. But this is another type of plant that, yeah, it's related to clover, but this one is called sorrel. It's called redwood sorrel. And some kids, if you are in the redwoods, might like doing this, because you can actually eat the bottoms of them. You just kind of chew the stem. It's kind of like a sour kind of a taste. Some people like it. Yeah, it's okay. I've had enough of redwood sorrel in my life. I don't really need to keep on eating it every time I come to the redwoods. But anyway, wow, this is so pretty. So right here, this is actually a tan oak tree that looks like it fell from way back there, and it just kind of collapsed up there. But that's kind of really, really pretty, huh? With this moss growing on the surface of it. Very nice. Wow. That's why I come to the Redwood Forest. That view right there. So the wind is blowing. And when I stand perfectly still, I can see the trees way up at the top moving. And the clouds, actually, I can see the clouds in the sky moving a lot too right now. The only sound I hear is just the sound of the wind, which is actually the sound of leaves rustling, right? The wind itself isn't making noise. It's the wind moving other things. Here comes the wind. That tan oak tree is moving so much. It's amazing. That tan oak tree that was moving a lot is this one right here. And it's actually so incredibly tall. That's probably what you see on your screen right there is probably about 20 feet tall. So that's about 40, 60, 80, 100. That tree itself is about 120 feet tall, I'm estimating. That's pretty amazing. But what's crazy about it is that it's so straight. That tree right smack in the middle of your screen is the one I'm talking about. Because see, usually tan oak trees are crooked. See all the ones that are growing off at an angle? The redwood trees are all these ones that are perfectly straight right here, but all these ones kind of going off at an angle, those are the tan oak trees. So here's a couple more right here, going off at an angle right there. That's a tan oak tree. There's another tan oak tree. So the fact that this one that I was just showing you is so straight, that's kind of cool. But there's an explanation for it because it's kind of in the middle of a little clearing. So there's no need for it to be all bent and crooked. It just grew straight and tall, straight up to the sun, right? Whereas all these other trees had to kind of lean out and reach and stretch and try to get out of the shade of some of these other trees to try to reach the sun. So it's pretty cool. Once you think about it, you can explain why you see things the way you see them. One of the things I love about having been a naturalist is that it does help me to understand things and to be able to explain things. Like for example, right here, I see some tan oak leaves that are really quite big. I mean, look at how big that is. That's almost as big as my hand. But in other places, some of the tan oak leaves aren't as big. But as far as why, it's obvious. Because right here, we're in a place where it's pretty shaded. So in order for this plant to survive, this plant needs to grow its leaves as big as possible. So that way it can get as much sunlight as possible, do as much photosynthesis as it possibly can. So that way it can be making as much food as it possibly can. So that way it can be as alive and healthy as it possibly can. But if it was growing in another place where there's a lot of sunlight, the leaves don't need to be so big. So the next time that you're walking around in nature and trying to explain some things, that might be kind of fun for you to do. Just think. Even if you don't know for sure exactly why something's the way it is, a lot of times your best guess is probably right up there with the real reason why something's the way it is. Just keep in mind, everything is just trying to survive, right? So there's gotta be a reason. Is it getting water? Is it getting food, sunlight? No matter if you're talking about a plant or an animal, everything's just trying to survive. So what could be the reason why something is the way that it is? Bring it back to explaining something about survival, and you're probably right on it. So here's another one of my favorite redwood forest plants, and it's the western sword fern. I love the sword ferns. And the reason why they're called a sword fern is that they have this little protrusion right there. Maybe you can see it, maybe not so well, above my finger, or yeah, right on top of where my finger is. That is, it's kind of supposed to look like a sword. You know, it's like that part that protects your hand on a sword. But you find them all over the place. And in some places, the sword ferns that are doing really well, they'll actually have spores on the backside of the leaves. I'm looking right now to see if I see that. And I don't see any right here like that. But I'll keep looking and then I'll show you what the spores are. So here's a tree that looks a little different. So check out this bark. Okay. Kind of looks like a redwood tree kind of a thing. Because yes, it is a conifer, meaning it's a kind of a tree that has cones. But this tree is a redwood tree. So look at the bark on this tree. Now sure, this one has some spider webs and stuff. Okay, sure. But look at the bark itself. See how this bark is kind of stringy? It runs straight up and down. This one, I'm gonna say, it reminds me of frosting on a chocolate cake. Maybe I'm just hungry, or maybe you can understand what I'm saying. So we got the stringy bark. This one is the redwood tree. And then we have this tree. That's a little bit different. Well, let me show you one other difference. And to look at this, we're gonna look straight down. Down on the ground. Now, right up here, there happens to be this big chunk of branches that fell off of this tree. And I happen to know it came off of the one tree with the frosting bark because I happen to know what it is. But let me show you the difference. So this tree has these tiny little needles that come out in all directions around the stem. So it's not just that the leaves are coming out just on like the right side and left side, but it's coming out in all directions all around. Now there's a bunch of brown leaves on the ground, but even if they were green, these leaves would be doing a totally different thing. Do you see what's happening? These leaves are totally flat. They come off the stem just to the right or the left. They do not come off the stem going up and down underneath. So again, let's look back at this guy. So this is the guy where the leaves come off in all directions. See, they're coming off up here where my thumb is, over here, over here, over here, all the way around. But these other leaves are just coming off to the side over here, or the other side over here. They're not coming off in all directions. So those flat leaves are the redwood leaves. And the ones that come off in all directions, those are the Douglas fir leaves. So now you know that that other tree, the tree with the frosting kind of looking bark, is the Douglas fir. Now I'm walking over here because here's a redwood that's short enough that I can actually see the leaves. So you can see what I mean. Here is the flat leaves of a redwood tree. And then in my hand, I've got those other kinds of leaves that are coming off in all directions, fluffier looking leaves of the Douglas fir. Now the Douglas fir also has completely different cones, and I'm just looking on the ground, randomly hoping to find some, and hey, look, I did. Remember that tiny little cone that I picked up just a few minutes ago? Those were the redwood cones. Well, this is a Douglas fir cone. For size reference, here is a redwood cone. So I've got a redwood cone and I've got a Douglas fir cone. This Douglas fir cone, though, is a little bit old and thrashed. I'm going to see if I can find you a good one to show you something kind of cool about a Douglas fir cone, because they have some really cool looking things that are stuck in it. Hold that thought. I'll see if I can find one. Something up there in the trees. I just heard something jump and land. I'm imagining it's a squirrel, but I don't see evidence of it. Wow. So there's a creek down there, and I can't really see it right now. I can't really see the water in it, but I do know it's there. Wow, there's a big one. That's a big redwood. up a little closer to that guy. You know, I said, hey, there's a really big one, and I wanted to get close to it. Wait till you see this. So here it is behind me. It's huge, and check this out. It is hard to get the true scale of what I'm looking at here, people. This thing is huge. Like, I can't, like, there's one arm, and then here's my other arm. Like, there's no way that I could even reach my arms halfway around this thing. It's huge. It's amazing. Oh, wow. And there's another big one, like, right there. That's amazing. Oh, and see that weird looking thing growing off his behind? That's weird. But what that is that's called a redwood burl. Remember I was showing you the places where the little tiny baby trees can sprout from the bigger ones? That's the kind of thing that they can sprout from. So that redwood burl, that crazy looking knotty thing right there, is that's the place where some of the baby trees are going to sprout from. But they also just sprout right at the base, any old place. But yeah, it's kind of amazing. Ooh, I can walk around this guy. Ooh, nice. Wow. Oh, this is amazing. Look. I could obviously do this all day, but maybe we should see if we could find something else too. So remember what I was saying about the size of those tan oak leaves a little further back up the trail? Look at how tiny these guys are. Look, they're barely even as big as my finger. So this is an area, there's the sky right here. This is an area that gets a lot of sun. So this particular plant, even though it's the same exact kind of plant as the one up the trail, this particular plant just isn't putting a lot of energy into growing its leaves really, really big. Doesn't need to. It has smaller leaves and it's able to get just the right amount of sunlight. If these leaves were too big, in fact, it could end up being a problem, because then you might have a situation where too much water is evaporating from these leaves. And that would cause a totally different problem, right? Then that particular plant would not have enough water to continue with photosynthesis and growing and all of the things that it needs to do. So it's a balance, right? Every plant, every animal is doing what it needs to do in order to survive. And whatever that looks like for that plant or animal, it might be slightly different, even among the same types of those plants and animals. So there's one thing I've been looking for that I don't think I'm gonna find today. And it has to do with this bright yellow dude that hangs out on the forest floor, decomposing the duff. By the way, duff is what you call all of that stuff. All the dead leaves and stuff that's fallen off of the trees. For whatever reason, in the redwood forest, you call it duff, D-U-F-F, at any rate. If there was a banana slug here, you would think that that would stand out, this bright yellow thing on the forest floor, right? Well, not so quick, because check it out. Right here is something that kind of looks like a banana slug, but it's not a banana slug. That is actually a leaf of a tree that's called a California bay laurel tree. And because it's here on the ground, must mean that there's a California bay somewhere. But honestly, I don't see it right here. So this must have blown over here from somewhere nearby. And by golly, I'm gonna find it. I need to find the bay laurel. So let me look around for it. But you know what else I found? Remember how I said I wanted to find a Douglas fir cone because they have something kind of cool in them? And I'm gonna bring that back with me and show you something very cool about that Douglas fir cone. Even though this is a really small one, oops, I dropped it. Even though this is a really small one, but still, I wanna show you guys something very cool about it. Well, I regret that I was just running because now I'm out of breath. But remember what I said that I didn't think I was gonna find? Well, guess what I just found? So here's the banana slug that we've been looking for. And I found another one of the bay leaves just for reference. So again, that's why the banana slug actually works in the redwood forest because you have this other plant, these bay leaves, that they turn yellow. When they fall on the ground, they do kind of look like a banana slug. Or rather, the banana slug kind of looks like the bay leaves. Therefore, standing out and being this yellow color isn't exactly a problem, because it is kind of that he's camouflaged after all. Now this guy has his antenna out, but it's kind of hard to see because they're very dark. But look right at the front of his head there. He keeps kind of sticking them out and putting them back in. You could also see, though, the multi-purpose hole on the side of his head. So they call it a multi-purpose hole because, as you can imagine, he must use it for a variety of different things. So that's where gas exchange happens. In other words, he's breathing. But that's also where reproduction happens. Yes, I'm talking about the having of babies, my friends. Yes, that is definitely involved with that as well. But his mouth is actually up at his head. But here's the really weird thing. Let's look at his tail for a second, because the way that he eats is that he eats that stuff off the end of his tail. So all of that stuff is little bits of the redwood duff that's all broken off, kind of mixed in with the mucus that's on his body. And when he gets hungry, he just kind of turns around, curls up in a C shape, and eats the food off his tail. So I'm sorry, did you hear me? The banana slug eats by eating the food off his... Yeah, I know, it's weird. So, when he's not doing disgusting things like eating the food off of his tail, you can see he's just kind of a cool, chill dude sliding along in the redwood forest. So he's a decomposer. So that means that what he's doing is breaking down the duff and the dead material that's all on the forest floor. But there's other decomposers out here too. And this is a good one right here, the stuff that's on this little branch. And there's also some on here, the white powdery stuff. And I see some on this log right here, a different kind of this stuff. So what you're looking at here are different types of fungi. Or in the case of the first stuff I showed you, that greenish looking stuff, that was actually something that's called lichen. And we'll discuss lichen in a minute or two. But at any rate, so this dead tree here that's just laying here, look, it's all broken, dead. This is being decomposed by these fungi right here. And a fungus is just a type of, or it's one type of something that you guys probably know as mushrooms. But. So one way that you can identify a tan oak tree is because of the very distinctive pattern of veins on the leaves. For example, the back side of the leaf, if you take a look at this, kind of looks like a parking lot, right? Kind of looks like the lines that would be drawn or painted on the ground for a parking lot. Like you could imagine driving your little cars up into all these little spaces. So all of these leaves right here, right next to me, these are all tan oak leaves. I also noticed right here in this spot, there's a couple of places where, look, this is the little caps that are on top of the acorns. So I haven't really seen many acorns on the ground, but these are the caps, anyway, that are on top of the acorns. And so this is what would be then hanging from the tree. If I find some acorns, I'll let you know. Wow. So check this out. So this is a place where this tree just fell across the trail. That's pretty amazing. I don't know exactly when it happened, but you can tell it is very recent because there's shards of the tree still remaining in the ground and they look pretty fresh. It looks pretty fresh. That's amazing. There's a piece that goes diagonally that's coming off of the base of that tree right there. And it's just like this sharp little shard that broke right off of the back side of that big giant trunk. So as far as how big is this? Well, let me show you. Remember, sometimes it's hard to tell size of something unless there's something in your vision to help you relate to the size, right? Well, this is how big this tree is. I can't even fit it all in the screen right here. So this tree that fell is absolutely huge. I'm gonna walk a little ways away from it now so that you can get a little better perspective. But it's huge. It's absolutely huge. That is probably about 6 feet, like the just across the diameter of that trunk right there is about 6 feet. It's amazing. I'll show you again, me standing next to it. See, I'm tiny. I can't even reach it. It's very, very big. This is a huge, huge tree that fell across the trail. So we're getting down closer to the creek, and I'm hoping that I'm going to find the last tree that I've been looking for, which is a California bay tree, or California bay laurel, they call it. So let's see what we find. I was right. This is a California bay laurel. Gosh, it looks gorgeous with the light shining through it, doesn't it? But we are right next to the creek now, and you can't really see it. It's there, but listen. So you can hear it. So we are right next to the creek, and this is the California bay tree. And one of the ways that you can tell a California bay is, so if you pick one of the leaves, and I like to just fold it in half, and it's such an awesome smell. It might remind you of cooking. Some people call it the spaghetti tree because it reminds them of making spaghetti sauce or other kinds of sauces and soups. A lot of people will put bay leaves in their cooking, and it helps to add an interesting flavor to the food. But I love that. So this is a California bay tree, and this particular one is just kind of a short, squatty thing. It actually looks like it broke a while ago, and so it's kind of bushy right here. Usually when I see them, they're nice and tall and stretching out across a creek and that sort of thing. But here, like I say, this little dude's a little bit short and squatty.